Welcome to Hoops and Headsets, a all-women's basketball podcast. All we're going to talk about is women's basketball and all the people involved are commentators of women's basketball. Once again, I'm joined by Shona Thorburn. Hey, Shona, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yes, very good. So our spotlight today for episode 4 is Umana Reyer and their chances at the final six. It's going to be an interesting one, this discussion about Umana Reyer, because I think it's very different, the situation they find themselves into other teams. But what I want to jump into first is a boost to their chances, I would say. But how big for Umana Reyer is the return of Villa?
I mean, huge. Yeah, it's been a while since she has played. She's only played 3 games for them. If they can get her back into the form that we saw her play with last year for them, so what I'm going to say, she was averaging around 10 points a game. And, game by game, you see her playing a little bit more also in the Italian league, the domestic league. I think, more than anything, it just gives you that extra confidence in your bench rotation as a coach and the coaching staff. Say it's not going great, people aren't playing well. Well, you know what? We have an extra player on the bench now who has already proven her in years past. I mean, she had a great season. What was it, 2 years ago when they were FIBA Euro Cup for them as well? So let's not forget, this is a quality player who, easily can give you 10 minutes a game, 3-4 assists. She'll get up, she'll pick up full court. She's little, but she's quick, she's athletic, and she has really, really good instincts. So, we're still a couple weeks away from the final 6. And I think that's just going to benefit her and Umana Reyer even more because she's going to be more in form come final 6.
And that was what I was going to say. Obviously, a month gap between kind of finishing the EuroLeague Women's playoffs and hitting the final 6. And with the international window, obviously not being selected, understandably so, trying to fight her way back in. Is that month a real game changer? Because like you say, we haven't seen her to the level that we have in previous years. She's averaging just shy of 3.3 assists a game, only playing about 9 minutes a game in the 3 EuroLeague Women's games she's played. Is that month enough to see maybe a return to the kind of numbers, and I'm thinking more minutes per game than anything else? She was playing 25 minutes a game last year. Is that month gap enough, do you think, that we will see her go back up to that number? Will it be somewhere in between, or will they keep her on very tight minutes this season as a whole, really?
Yeah, I do really believe that month will be enough time to see her get back into form. Will she give us the same kind of numbers that we saw last year? I'm not sure about that, but don't forget. So you have an extra month. It's not as though those 3 games that she played previous in the EuroLeague Women this season, so back in January, February, she was starting to come back before then. But, it's a process coming back from injury. It takes a while. So, I'm sure she was doing individuals. Then you start doing a little bit of contact. Then you get to play 3-on-3. Then you get to play 5-on-5. Then you do a full practice. Then maybe you play with, I would say, limited time constraints, which is completely normal. But, we're talking, she's probably been back on the court will have been a few months by the time the final 6 rolls around. It's hard to come back. I think any player can tell you that it's difficult. You usually don't find your form for a few months, but I think we'll see a little bit of an in-between of what we saw last year, what we've seen this year, and, what she can do. She'll get back there, but I think, maybe meet her in the middle. But again, it's just another player who has experience. She has national team experience. She has EuroLeague women's experience. The domestic league in Italy is really good. So she has a lot of experience and she'll get back there. And no matter what, she's going to help them.
Yeah, I think without doubt, the thing I've seen from the limited games that she's had up to this point, of obviously as we're recording a week ahead of when this is probably going to be released, maybe a couple of weeks, is that often when you see players return from particularly big injuries like that, you can see a fear in the way that they play. They're not willing to plant that foot as hard or cut as hard or put so much pressure through the particular area that they've injured. It doesn't feel that way with Villa. It feels like she is far more comfortable to go back almost straight away to playing her style of basketball, which I suppose from a coaching perspective, will give Coach Matt Zone and his kind of fellow coaches more confidence in opening up those minutes. If they saw that she was nervous, that would make them nervous to put her under that amount of pressure again.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like you said, maybe even like subconsciously, some athletes favor that injured side, let's say. I haven't seen that in the few minutes that she has played. You know, you're averaging around 9. It's been a little up and down, but I do think, this just my opinion. I do think guards can bounce back from major injuries a little bit better. And she is a small guard. She's athletic. I'm sure she was working hard on, staying fit as much as she possibly could while she was rehabbing this injury. So I'm not really worried about her. And I think we will see, when we follow the domestic league games leading up to the final 6, I can imagine us seeing her minutes go up. So she is prepared to possibly play 3 games out of 5 come mid-April.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they play that and whether there is any workload, kind of thinking about how we do that manage that load. Clearly, if she spends 2 minutes on the court, there's a boost to Reyer. She's 21 years of age, but she's still a phenomenal player already. That boost, is it an actual ability boost, what she's bringing on the floor? Is it an emotional boost, someone returning from injury and kind of refinding their form? Is it a mental boost to have someone they're emotionally close to as a teammate? Lots of them have been together for a long time. What kind of boost do we think that's going to have? Is it across the board? How will that impact them positively?
I think anytime, like you said, this is a young team, but the core Italian players have actually been around each other for a few years now, and we've got to see them grow from Eurocup to EuroLeague to now making the final 6. So it's really interesting. I think any time when you see your national team teammate and your club team teammate come back from injury, it motivates you a little bit more. You're going to be excited to see them step on the court. Obviously, we know that they're making their first ever Final 6 in the EuroLeague competition, and I don't think there's any way that that can affect the team negatively. I think, yeah, she's young, they're young, but I'm pretty sure, she's probably friends with a lot of the Italian players, and they're just going to be even much more excited to get to play with her again.
Yeah, it was great to see her. So covering Eurobasket 2025 in Bologna, obviously right in the middle of a rehab, well, really early on in a rehab, she was there supporting the team courtside. She was almost part of the team. So it's almost like her rehab, both physically, mentally, and kind of socially, was just going hand in hand. She wasn't going anywhere. She was always going to be ingrained. So it's less time away, I suppose, and having to reestablish those connections, those bonds. They're not kind of weakened. You said you didn't see any negative impact. The only thing that I picked out, and I suppose this is the same in any situation, is there are 200 minutes in a game for your 5, right? And you're going to have to carve them up. And Dojic and Santucci have been doing a really good job this year. They must be. They've got to the final 6, right? And they've been taking up a much bigger workload. So Santucci's playing 25 minutes a game. Dojic is around about 29 minutes a game. Clearly, as Villa's minutes go up, their minutes are going to have to come down. Will that impact their performance? How do you think, as players, they're going to react to that? What's the kind of vibe with that? Because that's an inevitable. It's not something you can avoid.
No, I mean, like you said, there's only a limited amount of minutes, and you got to figure out what to do with the 200 minutes that you have in a basketball game. I don't think it will, because then Santucci, Dojic, you can say, listen, when you're in, you go 110%, because we have that extra sub now coming in off of the bench. Their minutes will go down, but let's be honest. I mean, you get Dojic down to 26 minutes. Also, don't forget Charles. You could take a couple minutes away from Charles, put Dojic there, and, put Villa in. Santucci gets to go to the bench. So the rotation will change a little bit. And I think Charles is averaging around 30 minutes a game anyway. if you can get them down 25, 26 minutes a game, that does give Villa an extra 6, 7, 8 minutes, depending on how he wants to do the rotations. So, I know Charles plays position 3, but Dojkic can easily play the 3. Like, that's an easy transition for her to make. And, I think I have seen Umana Reyer play a couple times this year, and Dojkic was the one who was having to bring up the ball. That takes away from her game. So just having someone else, I think, adding to the rotation. Don't forget, if they win the quarterfinals, they have a day off and they have to prepare for another game. You and I were there for the World Cup qualifiers. It's very difficult to play lots of games in a short amount of time, and your goal is to be playing on Sunday. I think coaches will have to somewhat try and, I don't want to say limit minutes, but really handle the workload during that tournament. So, of course, it's, you go, you play the best players on that quarterfinal game because it's a must win. But I think as the tournament moves on and you're still playing, you do need to, at least in the first half, first 3/4 of a game, maybe give some players rest that we haven't seen them have all season. And now they have a rotation.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it makes sense. You're not taking the minutes from one player. You'll be stealing 2-3 minutes from each of those 3 players, and that will put Villa back up to 15 to 20 minutes, which is probably, let's be honest, at this stage of recovery would be a comfortable number from both player and team perspective, to put that kind of through her body. So we've obviously already had this discussion. The Italian national team, ready for a bit of cheesy here, are having a renaissance. Okay, nice little pun in there. So obviously, bronze medal, Women's Eurobasket 2025, qualifying for their first World Cup in 32 years, which is absolutely bonkers to think that's how long they've been away. Of the 12 players, both at the Eurobasket that won medals and at the qualifiers, 5 of them were Umana Reyer players. That performance, that kind of level that the Italian national team have got to, how does that trickle down into the domestic teams like Umana Reyer, like Schio? Obviously, they're the 2 main components of the national team. How does that impact them playing as a team in club basketball like EuroLeague Women's?
I mean, I think it's such a benefit where on your club team, you get to play with your national team players. And we have seen that with the growth of Umana Reyer in the last couple seasons. They've gone after a young core of national team players who are going to be the future for a while on the national team, along with Schio. Schio's always kind of had that. They usually go after the best Italian players, but there is no way that the success that they have recently had, like you said, qualifying for the first time in a very long time for the FIBA Basketball World Cup, cannot translate over positively. One, you're going to have a lot of confidence just individually coming back to your professional team after, having success with your national team. And 2, like I said, these players play together on the national team. They also play together on the club team. Any more time that you can get with each other just makes you play better, and I think some national teams, we see a difficulty because they don't have a lot of national team players that play all year round or professionally with each other for long stretches other than maybe a training camp. And I think that affects it. So I think it's such a positive. I'm really glad and I'm excited to see that Italy is back at the World Cup because they have been knocking on that door and some things haven't really gone their way. And, the Federation's done a great job, but it is just going to help the confidence of this Umana Reyer team heading into the Final Six. And it's not just the players. I mean, Coach Madzon has to be feeling good about himself as well because he helped Turkey qualify for the first time in, they missed out on 2022, I believe it was. So, he has to be feeling good about himself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be a kind of buzz around what they've done. And I think I agree with you with the fact that it's not an ability thing. I don't think the fact they've gone to the latter stages and played against some of the bigger, better teams has sharpened them. I think it's a belief. I think there's been a belief lacking in Italian basketball that they did, do they belong at the top table? Are they a second tier kind of country? And now they truly go, no, you know what? We are one of the best teams in Europe. And now we've got a chance of showing we're one of the best teams on the planet. They're starting to buy into some hype about themselves. And I remember speaking to, and it's outside of Umana Reyer now, Coca Verona in the content day before Women's Eurobasket. And I said to her, I've got you down as the semi-finals. And she looked at me in disbelief. But that was the problem I think they had, was they didn't have that necessary belief in themselves. But I think that certainly has helped. Obviously, it was interesting for the play-ins to get to this quarterfinal. You had Schio against Reyer, so you had pretty much one half of the Italian team against the other half of the Italian team. Has that played a part as well, do you think, in Reyer's rise, having a benchmark, a Schio have kind of been there to the EuroLeague Women's Final Six, Final Four
Right.
a few times recently? Does that help them to see and to pitch themselves where they need to be?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, they're rivals. They're Italian league rivals, but they're also like provincial rivals. They're
Yeah.
45 minutes from each other. So, I think it's a heated rivalry between Schio and Umana Reyer. But I think what I like is that Umana Reyer, they took their time building to where they have got right now. They didn't just decide, okay, we're going to invest. Everything's going into this year. It took them a couple of years. They had to have success, build a good Euro Cup team, have success in Euro Cup, and then they made the next step. And now they've made even the next step. I think the biggest thing for me is them getting the wins that they needed over Schio, their
Huge.
rival, to head to the final six. What a confidence boost.
Yeah.
Has to be a confidence boost.
Oh, absolutely massive, especially as it's those two always hitting lumps out of each other
Yeah.
domestically. One of them's going to win the league, one of them's winning the Super Cup, the Cup, and all of these competitions. They meet each other so regularly. And in recent years, it has been Schio that kind of had the better of those
Yeah.
competitions. So for them to hit the big one, to properly go, yeah, this is actually the biggest competition we face each other in, that's got to have given them a huge amount of boost to go forward and representing Italy now, and I'm sure in battle, Schio players, especially the Italian ones, absolutely wanted to win it. They are now wanting Umana Reyer to push on, I'm sure, even though they're competitive with one another. They'd love to see an Italian team and their national teammates go on and push and come back at least with a medal if they can, if not more. Kind of outside of the EuroLeague Women's, just a brief one. I was looking at this Italian team. Do we think this is a golden age of Italian basketball? I know it's a kind of term that gets bandied around a lot, but is it a golden age of Italian basketball, or are we just seeing the start of a kind of conveyor belt like France and Spain have had for such a long time? What do you think it is?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think, the Zandalicini generation, obviously, but it's their younger players right now, the 24, 23, 22-year-olds who are really contributing to the success of the national team, and I think it's starting to pay off. So is it a conveyor belt? Can we compare them to France right now? I don't think so. I think there's still a little bit a ways from that, or maybe also a Spanish national team program, where we're kind of seeing a changing of the tides as well. Um, yeah, not quite yet. I don't think we can compare them to some of the other big hitters in Europe.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm the same. I'm like, the point needs to be proven. I've commentated on a few of the junior women's Eurobaskets over the last few years, and we only put commentary onto the Final Four, the semis and finals,
Mhm.
and you're seeing more and more Italian teams get there.
Yeah.
You're seeing them break through. So it's the signs of that starting to happen. And from a neutral's perspective, I hope it is. It would be amazing to have, Spain, France, Italy, all just producing year after year after year, huge amounts of phenomenal young talent coming through. So it is a continual battle, and we're seeing, a broader run. Obviously, hopefully we see Belgium continue. They've surely got a golden age at the moment. We're not seeing a huge amount of youth coming through. So yeah, I really hope that it is the signs of kind of the Italian machine of producing these amazing players catching up with France, catching up with Spain, because I think that's only going to add to the kind of excitement we have.
I think it just adds to the growth of the women's game in general as well. I mean, let's not forget, we were just recently at the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, and every single European team that participated, okay, so Belgium had already qualified because they won Euro Cup. Germany qualified because they are hosting the event, but all the others had to qualify in this tournament, and every single European team qualified. So
It's a
that
huge
is
statement.
the growth.
Yeah.
It's not just Spain, it's not just France, Belgium recently. I think it's a huge statement of the growth of the women's game here in Europe, and it's a great thing to see. For me, it grows the game internationally as well, when the strength of a lot of other European nations are now stepping up, Hungary qualifying, and I think it's good for the sport, and it's also good for the clubs, the club basketball in Europe as well, because your national team players who also play on your club team are also competing at now the highest level.
Yeah.
It only grows the sport. More people will watch it, younger girls will watch it, and they'll want to play basketball.
Yeah, it's a kind of a virtuous circle, right? But yeah, it is when I saw that come through, that all of the European teams are qualified, it kind of did make you get excited. The likes of Czechia coming through, Turkey living up to some of the performances they put in at the Eurobasket in Athens last year. It was great to see so many European teams stepping up and so many leaning on young talent. It feels like
Mhm.
we've really flipped now, where some of those legendary names are starting to fade away, and they're starting to make their retirement announcements and all that. And the next generation are taking on that mantle and relishing that opportunity. So it's super exciting. And I think the Italian basketball team are set to have a very strong, when you look at this, Kubai's 27, Passa's 25, Pan's 28. They've got another, well, probably this World Cup, next World Cup, who knows, Olympics in them maybe.
Mhm.
They've got a good 6-7 years of
Yeah.
world class, and hopefully the next generation comes through to follow that through, and they can keep pushing forward. But yeah, super exciting. With that idea of young players in mind, final question for us to jump into today is based on the EuroLeague Women's website. So I'm putting that caveat out there before people jump on me. They're likely to have the youngest roster at the final six. And the simple question is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, I think age is just a number.
That's what we all
Um,
tell ourselves, Shona. I'm sorry, it's not
the
true.
older we
Age is
get,
not.
that's what we tell ourselves. Yeah, I agree with you.
I say that every morning when I wake up and
um,
I can just barely get out of bed because my back's killing. It's just a number,
yeah,
Mark.
I feel you. But I don't think that's a problem, having a young team heading to the final six. I think where the problem comes in, and where age is a part of that, is the experience. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of teams. This is their first time playing in the final six, so it won't be the only. But then there's also, a few other teams heading to the final six who have players who have final six, final four, FIBA EuroLeague experience, and that's where that can pay off. I mean, we talked about veterans the other day in an episode, and I think they're so vital. There's not a lot of veterans on this
Mm.
team that have final six experience.
Yeah, there's not. There's only two players
No.
over the age of 30. Mavunga is there, who obviously brings quite a bit of
Mhm.
experience across quite a few different clubs. And Nicolotti's there as well. But again, it's only her second EuroLeague women's campaign. It's not, there isn't that vast latter kind of tournament experience. We've talked about it in previous episodes. The atmosphere is likely to be mad in Zaragoza, no matter who you're playing. Even in their quarterfinal against Girona, there will be Girona fans. They will try and
Mhm.
pour in. And, you said it in the Zaragoza episode, Spain, they're going to cheer for the Spanish team. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to deal with that atmosphere, with that hostility potentially against them. So it will be interesting. From a coach's perspective, though, does it change how you treat a team, how you deal with a team, if you've got a bunch of younger players compared to if there's some veterans in there? Do you have to, sounds like a crazy statement, coach them a little bit more, or be a bit more controlling or dictatorial? Is there a different dynamic when you have a younger roster?
I don't necessarily think so. I don't think you're gonna give them a curfew because it's a younger roster, for example, than, asking
Yeah.
maybe a possible mother to be like, hey, you want to be in bed at this time? Well, have my child with me. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't happen like that. I think, he's not going to change anything. He's had success this year. Whatever Coach Metzon's been doing, it has worked. Why would he change heading into the final six? And, yeah, they're young, but they're still all professional basketball players. This is not their first rodeo at being a professional basketball player. I think they know what they need to do. They know what the goal is. They know what the focus is. And I don't think, as far as coach and his staff, they're not going to head into this and try and change anything too crazy. They're going to go with what they've done all season because that's where they've had success.
Yeah. I think it, I think if you start out with a young team, you kind of grow that team together, right? So they kind of know expectations. And even though you've got younger players, like you said, to a certain degree, that age seems a number. Some people are born leaders, right? You'll find a 21-year-old, we talked about Layla Lacan. She's super young, but she's already a leader because it's nothing to do with age. It's mentality and it's mindset. And I think you definitely have that within this Reyer team, that you have players that are willing to step into more of a leadership role. I wouldn't say necessarily they have a leader, but I think they kind of lead by pack. They lead by committee almost, and you see different players leading in different moments. So I think it's, not overly worrying that they're the youngest team there. One thing I would highlight, I think based on the roster that they have listed on the website, there are a couple of like 16, 17-year-olds who have played some games early in the season, and that obviously really pulls down your average. Most of their players are, you would say, in their prime years, are kind of between 25 and 30. They've got a nice level of experience. The years on their knees aren't catching them up too soon. Is that a good thing then, to have your players in their prime in this moment? Is that something that they will take confidence from? They'll look at each other. They've gone to battle with each other for a few years together. Is that a real big up that you haven't got super young players? Probably outside of Villa, we're not going to see super young. You haven't got super old players who might need a little hand on transition defense if the game's running a bit too fast. Having that stock in prime, surely that's a benefit, right?
Oh, I think so. I also think so, especially if there's a possibility that you have 3 games in 5 days.
Yeah,
That's easier for a player in their prime than someone in their 30s trying to do it. Even if
yeah.
you are in great shape, you take care of your body. It's just, the wear and tear and the miles that you have put on your body does end up catching up. So, I think take advantage and enjoy it, but I think there's a reason why we call it our prime years, and you're playing in your mid-20s to late 20s at a EuroLeague Final Six. I think that's a great accomplishment
Yeah.
as a professional basketball player, and you hope that they continue and make a few more of those.
Absolutely. And the final thing around this, just to wrap up the episode today, well, a couple of things. I'm going to fight. I'm going to throw those quick fires at you that you don't want to hear. But the final one on this element about them being a young team. Now, it might be me, but I put Reyer as the kind of underdogs heading into this final six. If I look at all 6 teams, I think they're probably the outsider of the 6 because they're a bit younger and maybe a little bit less jaded. And I'm not putting a stereotype on more veteran players. Does that reduce the impact this underdog status has, or does it even turn it into a motivator, kind of that younger chip on your shoulder to go and prove a point against some older heads around you, maybe?
Uh, I agree with you, kind of the dark horse of these 6
Yeah.
teams to lift the trophy on Sunday in Zaragoza. I think the advantage to that is you don't have a bullseye
Mm.
on your back,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
some of
yeah.
the older players, some of the bigger teams that we're going to talk about in some other episodes, you don't have that same pressure, and you can play better basketball when you don't have that kind of pressure sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for, a team that's younger, a little bit less experienced at this level, um, being the underdog can really be an advantage. And I hope that they use that advantage at the final 6.
Yeah, I think it could be. It's going to be super interesting. Ray are a bit like the conversation we had about Lond in the previous episodes. They're just one that's hard to predict. I thought, I'll put my hands up. I thought Skio was going to win that play, and I thought they were going to win it in 2 games, especially when they won the first game in Venice. I thought they were going to clean that up at home. And I'm kind of like, I've underestimated them. I'll put my hands up and say, actually, they probably have got a bigger chance than I'm giving them credit for right now. For them to execute on that bigger chance, what are the things they have to deliver? Even if you just want to focus in on that kind of Girona quarter-final, what is it that Reyer need to bring to that floor to make their way through to the semi-finals, and who knows how far they'll go?
I know basketball is a team sport, but I really think Charles is going to have a big game for them. The games where maybe she hasn't produced statistically. I know she's a great defender and she'll always commit to that, even if she's having a bad offensive night. But I really think Charles, to me, can be a difference maker in a win and a loss. And I think she's going to have a good shooting day. She's going to have to score for them. Obviously, there's Kubai's had a little bit of an up and down season. I think sometimes, I watch her and I'm like, oh, you're so much better than you're playing right now. And then other times she proves to me, and that's why I have that feeling about her game sometimes. I think, Dojkic is going to have to get open looks and make some of those shots that we've seen her make year in and year out on her professional teams and with her national team. But I think they're going to have to rely kind of on their big 3 heading in to get that win on game day 1 in the quarterfinals, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it is about the stars stepping up. If you look at that back court, the Italian core, they're not central scorers.
Yeah.
They're not focal points. They'll get points, but it won't be as a specific outcome from a particular set that they're running. It's just a break in play will happen or a disruption will happen that gives them that opportunity. So I think having a focal point like Charles will be interesting. The Kubai conversation, I think, super interesting. And that's one of the matchups I'm looking for. Being an origin of a 90s kind of basketball fan, a proper battle of the bigs between Kubai and Koulibaly as long as they've reinforced the floor, I think will be good, because I think those two will quite happily have proper post battles. The physicality will be huge between those two, and I think that could be one of the deciders. Can Kubai limit what Koulibaly does? I think Mavunga will obviously help him with that, but Mavunga wants to be a more stretch player, whereas Kubai is more than happy just to stay down in the low block and just play that super aggressive rim protector, garbage kind of player that just scoops up everything that no one else wants to deal with. So I'm going to be super interested on that one. I've asked you every time in all our episodes. I'll continue to ask you. Umana Reyer, what's your kind of prediction? What's your forecast? Where do you think they're getting to in the final 6?
I think they're definitely the underdogs heading into this tournament. That being said, I had the same opinion about you. I thought Skio was going to sweep them in 2 games. They lost at home, and then they had to go and win two must wins, one there and then one back at home. So clearly, I think getting over that hump of beating a domestic rival for a chance to play at the final 6, they're doing something right. But I think if Girona is on their game, they just have too much bench talent as well, compared to Umana Reyer. And, I can't see them going far. I think it'll be tough for them to get a quarterfinal win.
Yeah, I'm of a similar mind. I think the weird thing with this one is I would say, ask me about 15 minutes into that quarterfinal, I'll be able to tell you. That's where I'm at right now. Give me 10 to 15 minutes, even maybe 12 minutes of watching them play and see how they've approached the game, because I've seen Reyer just come out the blocks asleep in a couple of games, and you can't do this at this point. There is no way you can have a possession off, let alone a quarter off. So, for me, it's give me a quarter to watch, the first quarter at least, to watch them, and then I'll almost be able to go, maybe they can get to Sunday if they've turned up in the right mood and things are going their way early on. But I think it is a big ask. But again, who knows? We've been proved wrong numerous times. It's not going to be the last time we're proved wrong if Reyer make it all the way to Sunday and end up lifting the trophy. Okay. Well, that wraps up episode 4. Shona, thank you so much. Appreciate your input. We will be back with episode 5 very soon. We'll be focusing in on Galatasaray and their final 6 chances. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to Hoops and Headsets wherever you get your podcasts, and also give us a follow on social media. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm sure we'll see you all again soon.